2023 will go down as an amazing year for tennis fans. And certainly an unforgettable year for Carlos Alcaraz fans.
Alcaraz is back.
The highlights, the nature of the rivalries, the progress made and records broken, plus what he needs to improve on, we break it all down here on the recap of Carlitos' 2023 season. Alcaraz was, in many ways, the best thing to happen to tennis in 2022. You see, a year earlier, he was ranked outside the top 140, but at the beginning of 2022, Alcaraz was already number 32 in the world and was seeded for the first time in a major at the Australian Open. He didn't make it past the third round, but fast forward to a couple of months later, Alcaraz won titles in Rio, Miami, Barcelona, and Madrid. Just like that, we saw an 18-year-old dominating everyone. Alcaraz's sensational run reached a climax in the summer of 2022 when he won the US Open and became the youngest ever world number one. Despite his incredible achievements, there was one problem. Novak Djokovic wasn't around, and well, Rafa was struggling with injuries, so even though Carlos had done the unthinkable, some still needed to be convinced. Unfortunately for Alcaraz, he suffered an abdominal tear and his season ended prematurely. Despite not playing in the ATP Finals, Alcaraz finished 2022 as the youngest and first teenager to win the year-end #1 trophy. Entering into the 2023 season, the million-dollar question was whether Carlos could pull off the same results with the big boys around. And let me tell you, 2023 was even better than 2022 for Carlitos. But I understand not everyone's buying that, so let's put this season into context and reflect on how good Alcaraz actually is. Not playing at the Australian Open due to a hamstring injury and Nole winning the tournament meant that Alcaraz lost his world #1 status after holding it for 20 weeks. Alcaraz then won the Argentina Open in Buenos Aires in his first tournament of the year, but couldn't defend his title in Rio. Another hamstring injury saw Alcaraz withdraw from Acapulco. Alcaraz then shocked everyone by winning Indian Wells without dropping a set. I mean, no one had done it since Federer in 2017. Carlos beat Sinner and Medvedev, two of his biggest rivals en route to the title. Remember, Medvedev was on a 19-match winning streak, and well, Carlitos just ended it. Alcaraz's victory saw him complete both legs of the Sunshine Double, and was enough to see him return to the top spot. He got beat by Sinner in Miami in one of the matches of the year. I know you remember that, but if not, I'll show some clips right here. And he withdrew from Monte Carlo due to injuries in his left hand and some discomfort in his spine. But again, he was back with a bang, winning Barcelona without dropping a set, and claiming another Madrid Masters title. He then got upset in the third round at Rome by the then world number 35 Fabian Marozsan in straight sets. It was among the biggest upsets of the year. The 2023 French Open came, and we all know what happened. Carlos cramped against Novak, and it was a pretty anticlimactic end to the match. However, during the grass season, Carlos made one of the biggest turnarounds and kind of shocked everybody. Alcaraz won Queens in what was only his third career grass court tournament. He then beat 4-time defending champion and 7-time champion Djokovic in 5 sets in the final at Wimbledon. No other player outside the Big Four had won Wimbledon since Lleyton Hewitt in 2002. The kid was on top of the world. However, the second half of Carlitos' season was underwhelming by his standards. After winning 6 titles in the first half, Carlitos wouldn't win another title for the remainder of the season. He lost to Tommy Paul in Toronto. Novak saved match point to beat Alcaraz in the finals of the second best match of the year in Cincinnati. Daniil Medvedev then stopped him in 4 sets in the US Open semis. Alcaraz lost to Sinner and Dimitrov in Beijing and Shanghai respectively, in what was a disappointing Asian swing performance. After that, he withdrew from Basel due to injury before losing in his opening round at Paris-Bercy to Roman Safiullin. The ATP Finals then brought some redemption, with Alcaraz making it past the round-robin stage before getting outclassed by Novak again. Still, after all of that, Alcaraz ended the season as the year-end world #2. So if we were to sum up Alcaraz's season at a glance, here's what it would look like. 6 ATP titles, 2 Masters 1000s and 1 Slam. A second career major, like he actually backed up his first Slam on a different surface, increased his total career weeks at #1 from 16 to 36, year-end world #2, 11 wins against top 10 players, semifinals or better in every Slam played, a 65-12 win-loss record, a 100th ATP career win, $10,753,431 in prize money. Now that's a great season for a 20-year-old who still doesn't have everything completely figured out yet. But the problem is the big three have moved the goalposts for what a great season should actually look like. Of course, you can't compare Alcaraz's season to one of those of the all-time greats, but you have to give the guy his credit. We've just grown so accustomed to seeing someone win 2 or 3 Grand Slams a year, but maybe it's time to readjust our perspectives. Now let's do a little statistical comparison with 2022. 8,855 points compared to 6,820 points last year despite missing the Australian Open. A 65-12 record, which is an 84% win rate against a 57-13 record or 81% win rate from 2022. He played 17 tournaments in both seasons, but has one more title this season, 6 compared to 5 from last year. Better performances at Grand Slams. His head-to-head against top 10 players was 11-6 this year, a little step up from the 9-5 record from last year. Now, I understand that some of these improvements aren't the most significant, but it is important to note that Alcaraz did hold up to the benchmarks he set for himself last year. Now that is the quality of a true champion. Now let's compare his results in major tournaments to how each member of the Big Three performed when they were 20 years old. Federer had a 49-21 season at age 20. Novak had a 68-19 season. Rafa was 59-12. Carlos's 2023 is a little similar to Rafa's 2006, but Carlitos performed better on hard courts. Actually, we shouldn't be doing these comparisons just because there are too many variables at play, but the truth is that Alcaraz at 20 is doing things that would even impress the Big Three. Now here's an insane stat. Carlos Alcaraz has now won as many Grand Slams as all players born in the 1990s put together. How about that for a 20-year-old? We cover some interesting takes like this in the newsletter and bring you up to speed with the latest happenings from around the tour. So if you haven't subscribed yet, click the link in our description and meet us there. And if you're already subscribed, what would you like to see in the newsletter? Let us know in the comments. Now let's talk about the changes in Alcaraz's game this year.
Right now, I know all the things that I have to improve if I want to beat the best player in the world.
Honestly, not too much has changed from last year, but Carlos still knows that he has some things to work on. Let's start with the most obvious. No doubt, Alcaraz has improved a lot on his serves. Still, he has some ups and downs in his service games. Where am I going with this? Alcaraz ranks 39th in terms of first serve points won on the tour this season, but interestingly, he ranks 3rd in second serve points won. He comes in at number 12 in terms of total service games won by percentage. Now, those numbers are good enough to put him in a position to win most matches, but for someone who wants to hold down the number 1 spot for years to come, he's definitely going to have to do a little bit better with his serve placement and variety. His backhand could also improve to the level of Sinner's, especially down the line. Aside from the obvious deficits on his serve, most parts of Alcaraz's game are solid. He leads the tour for percentage of first serve return points and percentage of return games won for the season. The lobs, volleys, net game, and drop shots are still world class, but something else caught my attention. Carlitos isn't quite there in terms of managing a full season. Again, we really don't expect him to be at age 20. He's still maturing physically and is a work in progress with Juan Carlos Ferrero. Whether it's in terms of managing his schedule better or workshopping certain aspects of his game to maybe play smarter, shorten points, and avoid wasting energy unnecessarily, Alcaraz would need to find a way to go easier on his body and reduce his risk of injuries. Totally unrelated here, but who else thinks that Carlitos needs to tone it down a bit with the grunts? Well, Rafa has left the chat. We also need to mention Alcaraz's biggest rivalries this year. He had Daniil Medvedev's number this year with a 3-1 record, with wins in the Indian Wells final, Wimbledon semis, and a round-robin match at the ATP finals where Medvedev had already qualified. However, Medi got Carlitos at the US Open. I still think Daniil is the much better hardcourt player, but I think the onus is on the Russian to find some answers to Carlitos' game beyond the hard courts. Meanwhile, Alcaraz trails Jannik Sinner 1-2 in their head-to-head this year and 3-4 overall. It's been an interesting matchup, but what actually makes Sinner such a difficult fixture for Alcaraz? We've been thinking about making a full video about Sinner, so if you want to see it, let us know in the comments. The answer lies in the Italian's ultra-aggressive hitting. Although Alcaraz has more variety, Sinner hits with consistent depth and power off both wings and takes time away from the Spaniard. These two are easily the best players of their generation, and it'll be exciting to see how their rivalry shapes up in the coming years. And now to Alcaraz's biggest rival in 2023. Novak Djokovic beat Alcaraz 3 out of the 4 times they faced off this year, at the French Open semis, the Cincinnati Open final, and the ATP final semis. However, Carlos edged out Nole in the Wimbledon final by showing enormous mental resilience and strength of character after his French Open collapse. But back-to-back losses against Novak kinda makes you wonder how small the gap really is between the two players. Personally, I still think that Novak is levels ahead of Alcaraz, and that Alcaraz might need another year to really close on him. Maybe not on clay, though. Really, what it's going to come down to is how much Alcaraz actually improves and what Novak does over the course of the year. But one thing's for certain, Novak is going to do everything in his power to hold on to that top spot. We have seen that Alcaraz is good enough to beat Nole, but sometimes you can't be 100% confident that he'll do it more frequently next year. Alcaraz admitted that he gets extra motivation and joy to have fans of Rafael Nadal and Roger Federer cheering him on when he plays Novak Djokovic. Personally, I think it's quite normal to aim for the top guy if you're Alcaraz, but the problem is that he might have gotten a little bit too obsessed with beating Novak. We all saw how that shook out at the year-end finals, where it seemed like Alcaraz just put a little bit too much pressure on himself. The key going forward should be to focus on one match at a time. Literally every part of Alcaraz's game has improved. Winning Wimbledon alone defined Alcaraz's season. Bagging the most prestigious title in tennis against the best player in history on the surface, where he had the least experience as a 20-year-old, really, it doesn't get any better than that. Alcaraz's 6 titles this year came in the first half of the season, and although he ran out of steam post-Wimbledon and didn't win any titles for the remainder of the season, we shouldn't ignore the progress that he's made so far. It's kind of what we tend to do sometimes as tennis fans, and that's just recency bias. One of the biggest improvements I noticed aside from his game is Carlitos' mentality. He has made it very clear that he wants to be the best in history and isn't just comfortable winning just a few titles. Even when he isn't playing at his best, Alcaraz does a decent job managing his frustrations compared to many of the next-gen players. He's also the fastest learner I've seen in a long time. Even the best players in history have had a longer learning curve. For example, it took Federer a couple of years to get his game together. Djokovic wasn't exactly a teenage sensation either, so it's quite interesting to see that Carlos really doesn't have a major area that he needs to work on. But let me know if you have other ideas. Here's what I think about Alcaraz after this season. If you bought the Alcaraz hype, there's not much to be worried about because he just had another great season. How did Carlos perform compared to expectations at the end of 2022? If you ask me, I'd say a little better than expected. No one expected him to adapt so quickly on grass, and he also defended his titles in Barcelona and Madrid. Pretty underrated in my opinion, in addition to everything else that he accomplished this year that we've already covered. You see, the problem is that some fans expected Carlos to just explode into the stratosphere and completely annihilate everyone. Well, sorry to burst your bubble. That's not how it works in the real world. The depth of the ATP player field is amazing, and strong competitors like Sinner, Medvedev, and Novak will always be there to give Alcaraz a run for his money. On top of that, as amazing as Carlitos 2023 was, he was overshadowed by someone better and even bigger. Someone who had a career year and one of the best years in the history of the sport. No shame in that, but safe to say, Carlos still has a plan. He says he's here to stop Novak again in 2024, but first, they're expected to face each other again at the Riyadh Season Cup Performance Tournament in Saudi Arabia. Honestly, Alcaraz has nothing to worry about in the long term. His ability alone will bring him plenty of titles, and with a few tweaks here and there, he might truly become unstoppable. But what do you think? How would you rate Alcaraz this season? Meanwhile, what's going on with Tsitsipas? What happened to him this year? There's a lot to talk about, but don't worry because we break it down in that video, so if you haven't checked it out, do you know what to do?